Welcome to Tessera, a podcast by Tesseros. Here, we're learning in the workshop of everyday life. Small adjustments, simplified workflows, creative ideas explored instead of ignored. Each episode, I share real stories from home and work as I experiment with technology and AI. Not to chase perfection, but to build systems that support what actually matter. Because when our systems support us, we create space for the things that shape us. I'm glad you're here to build this mosaic. Let's place the next piece. Welcome back. It's spring break here, which means that we've spent the last week primarily offline, playing games, going swimming. But a few things happened this week at work and at home that got me thinking about something I want to explore with you today. We talk a lot about what we do with our time, and I've been thinking recently about something that comes before that, what we let in. The information, the content that fills the spaces between everything else. And often we don't specifically choose it, we just kind of fill it. And then based on what we've been looking at, the algorithm decides what we're seeing. And we've noticed that our brains need that downtime, but also what are we actually scrolling for? And so I had been spending an inordinate amount of time on Reddit and Facebook community groups, and Andrew uses X. And we were thinking about we don't want to be on our phones all the time while we're home with the kids. And so we wanted to be a lot more intentional about when we had our phones out and when we don't. And I will say all the 2FA stuff makes it really hard to just set your phone on a shelf and leave it. And so we do find that we're needing to be conscious if we need to bring it down to work. But luckily, since that's not something we're doing too much of right now, it's been a little easier to actually think about what are we scrolling for? And it's not just filling time, though that's some of it. I think we get used to the fact that our time should always be filled. Every moment should be full of something. And our brains need time to be flat, to unwind. Because in those little moments of quiet is when you start to get ideas and to relax. But the other thing is that sometimes when you're scrolling, you're searching for something, and having this intentional break to go, well, what are we actually searching for, led us to some really interesting ideas. And so we decided we wanted to try and replace our scrolling with an automated report. And we took some of the downtime that we had and each went through and went, what am I actually looking for? And I want to give you the prompt that I'm using and read it out loud because I think it's helpful to hear the specificity of it. So in Gemini, I asked it to provide a daily summary in bullet points covering global news, BC and Canadian news, local events and activities happening this week in my city and communities within 1.5 hours of me, top tech news, one tactile skill idea, a cool fact, a globally inspired meal idea for breakfast, lunch, which could be school friendly, and dinner, and end with a dad joke. I have a reason for each of the categories in there. Global and Canadian news, because I want to stay informed without having to go looking. And I have liked that the way that it's presented from Gemini feels much more neutral and fact-oriented than when I read it elsewhere. Local events, because I want to know what's happening around us. And if there's something cool that comes up, we want to be able to go to it. Tech news is relevant to my work, so I want to kind of keep up on what's happening. The tactile skill, because I love having hands-on activities. It makes things fun, and I like to use digital tools to get offline. And a cool fact just for fun. Like that's, I think, a lot of the random factor that I'm searching for is what is something that I might not come across otherwise. And practical meal ideas all in one place. And the dad joke, because it's a fun way to start the day. You finish off with either a groan or a laugh, and I enjoy that. What I found is that I'm getting the information that I actually wanted from these groups without the pull to keep scrolling. I open it, I read it, and I'm done. And it takes maybe 5 minutes instead of 25. There has been a hiccup. When I've gone back to edit the prompt, and I've just been doing it through the mobile app and asking it for revisions, I wanted to add some categories, and Gemini duplicated the automated report that it was sending instead of updating my original instructions. So now I have at 7 a.m., it will give me 2 copies of the report at once. So if it happens again, my next step will be going to my desktop to see if I can edit the directions in more detail there. And then if not, I'll copy the updated prompt into a fresh chat and ask it to set up the report to send me at 7 a.m. with the same conversation, but just a fresh one to fix that glitch. And then the next step I've been planning is a second report, probably around midday, building specifically around my personal interests. So reviewing the Reddit communities that I follow, and then building in facts from there. So like AI prompting and automation, sewing, bookbinding, possibly structured as like daily tidbits or a learning plan. I'm not sure. But that'll help me kind of figure out how to build my own briefing from the communities that I want to learn from. The other thing with spring break, but we were looking for ways to make the week feel special without necessarily going anywhere or spending a lot. And so eating in the living room at our house is a treat because we finally got new living furniture since the kids were mini, which in our house makes it a really big treat. And so we watched Pirates of the Caribbean for the first time. And I wanted to make the food part of the experience rather than just popcorn. So I asked Gemini to help me come up with pirate-themed movie night foods, and it succeeded. We had things like cannonball meatballs, and we had different snack boxes and ship biscuits, and the kids were completely into it. The theming made the whole evening feel like an event rather than just a movie. And it's such a small use of AI. A couple minutes of prompting, totally low stakes. And it's a good example of using the tools to add creativity to an ordinary moment instead of just solving a problem. And that's something I want to keep making space for. On the work side, the Time Mosaic course is live. For anyone who's been following along, what I started feeling concerned at the 90% point about is everything I'm doing wrong, it's done, it's out, the link is in the show notes. And launching it created an immediate next problem. Almost everything on our website was written before the course existed. And so the copy was lagging behind where we actually were. And our goal and our audience has pivoted as we've been working through the kind of content we want to be able to make and the educational materials we want to provide. So I spent some time going through each page, like our podcast description, the about section, the course page itself, and looking at it with the same fresh eyes approach that we talked about in episode 8. And the process was interesting. I fed our completed products and current pages into both Claude and Gemini and talked through what we're trying to do, where we're headed, and asked them to help identify where things felt misaligned or out of date. And then I worked with each of them to develop new copy. And there was a really practical difference between the two tools worth mentioning. Gemini could go directly to our website and read the live pages, which makes sense. It's a Google product and has search engine access, and Claude couldn't get in. It returned an error, and when I asked why, it suggested it was likely because our site was hosted on PayHip, which actively limits scraping to protect course content. So Claude wasn't allowed in the same way. So the workaround I used was to take screenshots and direct copy paste to work with Claude because I prefer its writing style for this kind of work. And then once the pages were updated and published, I had Gemini go back to the live site and give me feedback on how the copy might land with our actual audience, checking tone, spelling, alignment, all of it. So 2 tools, different strengths used in sequence, and that worked really well for me. A couple other things worth sharing. I discovered that Anthropic, so that's the company behind Claude, has a free learning resource called Anthropic Academy, and it's at anthropic.com/learn. I just started their 101 orientation, and it's well put together. What I'm finding is that because Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT all work on similar underlying principles, Learning from Anthropic's own documentation is making me more effective across all of them, so not just Claude. So if you've been wanting a clear place to start learning how these tools actually work, that's worth a look. I've also canceled my ChatGPT subscription. I just wasn't using it anymore. I'm still on Claude's free plan and paying for Gemini. Working within these limits has been quite useful. It's made me more intentional about how I structure my queries and what I'm uploading because I'm not just throwing everything at it, and constraints can be clarifying. And then there's course 3. I've taken a short break after the Time Mosaic to let my brain reset before the finance course ramps up. But I've started early brainstorming on what comes next. The thinking behind our courses is that when you know who you are and what you actually value, every domain gets easier. Time, money, decisions, adversity. And time and money feel straightforward to teach, but what does it actually look like to teach a decision-making framework or how to respond to adversity with flexibility? To help with that, and thinking that through, I've used Gemini's deep research feature. I put in the course options I'm considering, my initial thinking on pros and cons, and the audience I'm trying to reach, and I asked it to go research which path might be the most useful. Then I followed up asking for a potential course outline framework, and the report it came back with was substantial. So after spring break, my next step will be to download the report and bring it to Claude for the next round of discussion and brainstorming. So 2 tools again, each one doing what it does best. So whether it was a morning briefing, a pirate night, website copy, or course research, the common thread this week has been the same: thinking about what gets in rather than absorbing everything that shows up. And you don't have to overhaul anything. You just have to make one deliberate choice about what you're letting into your day. A custom report instead of a scroll, a themed dinner instead of whatever is common, a focused prompt instead of open-ended research. Small choices, clear signals. This week's challenge: build your own morning briefing. Pick 3 to 5 categories of information you actually want. Local news, a skill idea, meal planning, whatever matters to you. And ask an AI to summarize them each morning. Run it for a week and see if it changes how much you scroll. You don't have to start with my full prompt. Start with one category and see what comes back. Thanks for listening to Tessera. If this episode sparked an idea or helped you forge a new path, we'd love to hear it. Tessera is built by community. Send us your questions, feedback, or stories about how you're using AI and other technologies to simplify your life. Email us at hello@tesseros.com or leave a review on the app where you're listening right now. And if you know someone who's looking to craft their life a little bit differently, please share this episode with them. You can find all episodes, show notes, and extras at tesseros.com/Tessera and subscribe through your preferred podcast app. Until next time, keep placing the pieces that matter.